$200 million. That's about the amount of money sitting in Eiichiro Oda's bank account right now. Not just successful, we're talking about a man who completely shattered what anyone thought was possible in the manga industry. While most creators are lucky if people remember their work after 5 years, Oda's been dominating for nearly 3 decades with absolutely no signs of slowing down. Oda isn't just rich for a manga artist, like this goat is straight up wealthier than entire publishing companies. This man has a higher net worth than his idol Akira Toriyama, Naruto creator Masashi Kishimoto, and basically every other big name in manga combined. We're talking Sandra Bullock and Spike Lee territory. Not successful for a comic book guy, but buy a private island if he wanted, wealthy. And he built this empire by drawing magical pirates. Most people hear One Piece is popular and think, oh wow, peak fiction, without realizing the absolute insanity of its success. With over 520 million copies sold, One Piece isn't just the best-selling manga ever. It's one of the best-selling publications of any kind in human history. What's even more mind-blowing is that this juggernaut started in 1997, but how does a kid go from doodling pirates to becoming wealthier than most Hollywood celebrities? The journey from nobody to manga god didn't happen overnight, and it's way more interesting than most people realize. Born on January 1st, 1975 in Kumamoto, Japan, Oda decided at just 4 years old that he wanted to become a manga artist. Not because he was some artistic prodigy with a divine calling, but because in his childish logic he thought manga artists didn't have to do real work. The cosmic irony here is almost painful. Oda now sleeps just 3 hours a night to maintain a work schedule that would literally kill most people. I mean 3 fucking hours. This man isn't just dedicated, he's operating on a completely different level of existence where normal human limitations don't apply. His childhood obsessions already pointed toward what would eventually become One Piece. He was fascinated by the anime Vicky the Viking, which sparked his lifelong interest in pirates and adventure. But the turning point came when he discovered Dragon Ball by Akira Toriyama, which completely revolutionized his understanding of what manga could be. This wasn't just casual reading. Dragon Ball became the blueprint that would shape Oda's entire approach to storytelling. The influence of Toriyama on Oda's work is so obvious that when Toriyama died in March 2024, Oda was completely devastated, losing the creator who had fundamentally shaped his entire career. While other kids were just reading manga, Oda was obsessively studying them. By 5th grade, he was already creating his own characters and storylines, developing the skills that would eventually make him millions. When most teenagers were figuring out what to do after high school, Oda was already submitting his work to major competitions. By 17, when most of us were still figuring out how to grow a small beard, Oda had already won 2nd place in the prestigious Tezuka Awards for his one-shot Wanted. This wasn't just some minor recognition. The Tezuka Award is essentially the Olympics of manga for new artists. His entry, a gag western with supernatural elements, already showed the blend of humor and action that would become his trademark. The judges didn't just like it. They were blown away by this high schooler's natural storytelling abilities. Instead of following the normal path of university, Oda made the decision that would shape the rest of his life, dropping out to pursue manga full-time, moving to Tokyo to work as an assistant for established artists. His parents probably thought he was throwing his life away, and it was indeed a really risky choice. But instead, he was about to create the most successful manga franchise in history. The assistant years were crucial, but brutal. Oda worked under several established mangaka, including Nobuhiro Watsuki on Rurouni Kenshin. This wasn't glamorous work. We're talking mind-numbing tasks like drawing backgrounds and inking panels for someone else's vision, but Oda wasn't just completing assignments. He was absorbing everything he could about the industry while simultaneously developing his own ideas. He even created the character Hanjo Kamatari for Rurouni Kenshin, already showing his talent for character design. During this time, Oda was developing early versions of what would become One Piece through one-shots called Romance Dawn. These prototype stories featured an early version of Luffy and established the basic concept of the pirate era, but when he tried to get them serialized, editors kept rejecting them. Any normal person would have given up or drastically changed their concept. Oda just kept refining, convinced that his pirate saga would connect if given the chance. After multiple rejections and revisions, One Piece finally began serialization in Weekly Shonen Jump in 1997. But now listen up, because you're not going to believe this. Oda originally planned for the series to last only 5 years. Yep, you heard that right. If he had stuck to that timeline, One Piece would have ended around the Alabasta arc, which is now considered just the beginning of the Grand Saga. Imagine if Star Wars had ended after A New Hope, or if Harry Potter stopped at the first book. That's how much story we would have missed. What changed Oda's mind? The unprecedented fan response. The series built momentum gradually, with its popularity exploding around the Arlong Park arc, roughly 70 chapters in. This wasn't just readers enjoying a story. This was the beginning of a cultural phenomenon. Fans weren't just following the adventures of Luffy and his crew, they were becoming obsessed with the expansive world Oda was creating. The anime adaptation that began in 1999 only accelerated this growth, introducing the series to audiences who might never have picked up a manga. Suddenly, One Piece wasn't just a comic, it was a multi multimedia franchise that was rapidly becoming part of Japan's cultural identity. Every new character, every plot twist, every new island the Straw Hats visited became a national event. As the series expanded far beyond its initially planned length, Oda wasn't just making up the story as he went along. The man had already mapped out major plot points decades in advance. Islands and characters mentioned in passing in early chapters would suddenly become central to the plot hundreds of chapters later. This wasn't luck. This was meticulous planning by a storytelling mastermind who had the entire journey planned while still allowing for creative flexibility. The financial explosion that followed is almost impossible to comprehend. At roughly $510 per volume and over 520 million copies sold, we're looking at billions in revenue from manga sales alone. Volume 67 had an initial print run of 4.05 million copies, not total sales, just the first printing. These kinds of numbers make the biggest Western publishers look like amateur operations, but the manga was just the beginning. One Piece merchandise is literally everywhere in Japan and increasingly common worldwide. From action figures to clothing, video games to theme park attractions, the franchise has expanded into every conceivable market. The sheer breadth of licensing deals is mind-boggling. One Piece characters have appeared on everything from airplanes to credit cards. Then there are the films, with One Piece Film Red alone grossing over $144 million, becoming one of the highest-grossing anime films in history. What makes all of this even more impressive is how Oda has maintained complete creative control. Unlike many creators who lose ownership of their work as it grows more successful, Oda has remained firmly at the helm of One Piece. He serves as executive producer on the films, has final say on major adaptations like the recent Netflix series, and is known for his meticulous oversight of all aspects of the franchise. This isn't just a creator who got lucky. This is a man who built an empire through sheer force of will and refuses to let anyone compromise his vision. So how much longer will One Piece continue? After more than 25 years of continuous publication, the series is officially in its final saga, but in Oda terms, that could still mean several more years of content. The man thinks on a completely different scale than other creators. What would be an entire series for most mangaka is just a single arc in Oda's grand vision. What we do know is that Oda has confirmed he knows exactly how One Piece will end. The final panel, the ultimate revelation of what the One Piece treasure actually is, it's all already decided, and based on how meticulously he's crafted the story so far, that ending will likely be something he's been setting up since the very beginning. The payoff for fans who've been following for decades will be nothing short of monumental. As the series approaches its conclusion, Oda's work schedule hasn't lightened at all. He's still maintaining the same insane pace, sleeping 3 hours a night, working through holidays, and pushing himself beyond what any normal human could endure. When he was hospitalized for a paratonsillar abscess in 2013, he was back to drawing within days. This relentless dedication is why, even after 25+ years, the quality of One Piece hasn't declined like so many other long-running series. When One Piece does finally end, it will mark the conclusion of not just a manga, but a cultural era. The series has influenced an entire generation of creators, readers, and viewers worldwide. It's reshaped how stories are told, how manga is marketed, and what's possible in the medium. The ending will not just be a final chapter, it will be a global event. What comes next for Oda after One Piece? He's mentioned in interviews that he might like to create a robot manga, but he's also admitted that his health might not allow him to take on another long-running series. After the superhuman effort of creating One Piece for over 25 years, most people would expect and hope that he would finally take a well-deserved retirement, enjoying the hundreds of millions he's earned by relaxing with his family in his mansion. But given how Oda has spent his entire adult life pushing beyond normal human limitations, it's hard to imagine him simply stopping, whether it's a shorter series, one-shots, or creative oversight of the One Piece franchise as it continues to expand into new media. Oda's creative mind likely won't rest easily. The man who decided to become a manga artist to avoid real work has proven that when you're creating something you love, the work itself becomes a driving purpose. Whether One Piece goes down as the greatest manga ever created is subjective, but what's undeniable is that it's the most commercially successful by an astronomical margin. Oda hasn't just created a popular series, he's built a global phenomenon that has transformed the entire manga industry. From a kid who just wanted to draw pirates, he's become the undisputed king of manga, with a legacy that will influence storytelling for generations to come. By the time One Piece concludes, Oda will have created a single continuous story spanning over 1,000 chapters and 25+ years, a feat of creative endurance unmatched in the history of comics. Whether he retires to enjoy his fortune or surprises us with something entirely new, one thing is certain: there will never be another Eiichiro Oda, and there will never be another manga phenomenon like One Piece. The boy who wanted to avoid real work ended up working harder than anyone else in the industry, and in doing so, he redefined what manga could be.